Morning, brothers and sisters. God bless you. I'd just like to share a message with you today. Just from Deuteronomy chapter 20 and verse 1. It says, when you go out to battle against your enemies and see horses and chariots and people more numerous than you, do not be afraid of them, for the Lord your God is with you, who brought you up from the land of Egypt. So it shall be when you are on the verge of battle, that the priest shall approach and speak to the people, and he shall say to them, Hear, O Israel, today you are on the verge of battle with your enemies. Do not let your heart faint. Do not be afraid, and do not tremble or be terrified because of them. For the Lord your God is he who goes with you to fight for you against your enemies to save you. Then the officers shall speak to the people, saying, What man is there who has built a new house and has not dedicated it? Let him go and return to his house, lest he die in the battle and another man dedicate it. Also, what man is there who has planted a vineyard and has not eaten of it? Let him go and return to his house, lest he die in the battle and another man eat of it. And what man is there who is betrothed to a woman who has not married her? Let him go and return to his house, lest he die in the battle and another man marry her. The officers shall speak further to the people and say, What man is there who is fearful and faint-hearted? Let him go and return to his house, lest the heart of his brethren faint like his. And so it shall be, when the officers have finished speaking to the people, that they shall make captains of the armies to lead the people. And I just want to speak just briefly this morning really about warfare, about spiritual warfare. You notice here what's said to the people of Israel. Now this is preparing the people of Israel to really be, before they go into the promised land, it's preparing them on the way to approach war. And notice what's said to them. It says that when you go into battle, not if you go into battle, it was when. You see, Israel's future was to be a future of conflict, of war, of battle. And really, we need to understand this morning that the Christian life is all about conflict. It's all about battle and war, but in the spiritual realm. You read in 1 Samuel 17 about David, when David goes up against Goliath. And you notice that you have Goliath coming out for 40 days. The Philistines are encamped on one side and the Israelites are camped on the other side, and there's this valley in between. And daily he would come out and taunt the people. And one day David turns up to bring food to his brothers, and he hears the words of this Philistine. And you read that every time he came out, that the army of Israel, they shook, they trembled, they were afraid, because of the size of Goliath and the threats that he was calling out. And out of all of them, David's the only man who stood up and said, Who is this man who comes against the armies of the Lord? Who speaks all of these words against the armies of the Lord? You see, Israel forgot at that time all of the promises that God had made Israel. You see, notice one of the things that was said to Israel when they went out, and it was said to them that it's the Lord who will fight for you. Do not be afraid of your enemies when you go up, and when you see, enemies with horses and chariots and people more numerous than you, greater armies, greater weapons, greater everything that they have than you. But do not be afraid when you go up, because the Lord is he who goes up before you. It's he who fights for you. So do not be afraid of them. They forgot that. They saw this army, they saw Goliath coming out, and they were afraid, they were terrified. It took David, that one man, that shepherd boy, to come along and remember the promises of God and stand on the promises of God. And so it was him who said, I'll go up and fight it. I'll fight him. I'll go up against the Philistine. And even he assures Saul and assures the people, don't be afraid of him, because the Lord will deliver him into my hand. If we look in Deuteronomy, what we've just read, it brings out a list of all those who go up to battle. And it says if there's men who have built a new house and they haven't lived in it, let them go back. Don't let them go to war. If there's men who are betrothed, who have got a woman who they're going to marry and they haven't married, tell them to leave the battle, go back. Those who planted a vineyard, if they haven't ate of the fruit, tell them to go back. Because those whose minds and hearts are somewhere else, they're not effective in the battle. They're not able to fight. And so he says to them, those whose heart and mind who are distracted, who are somewhere else, who are thinking about the world and thinking about the things of the world, tell them to go back. He goes on to say that those who are faint-hearted, those who are afraid, tell them to go back. If they don't have any trust in the Lord, if there's no faith in God, tell them to go back. Because all they're going to do is cause others to be faint-hearted and afraid. Notice in the New Testament, we're told in 2 Timothy chapter 2 and verse 4, it says that a good soldier, doesn't get involved in civilian affairs. It means he doesn't get involved in the affairs of the world. But his mind and his heart is dedicated to the battle that they're in. These people who were told, tell them to go back. Tell them not to go up to fight. Let them not be involved in the war because they have hearts and their minds somewhere else. And all they're going to do is lose. And they're going to die in battle. You see, fear and doubt and negativity, it breeds fear and doubt and negativity. You see, the Lord would rather the people go back and use a smaller army than a bigger army. You see, God was more interested in the heart of the army rather than the size of it. You see, God could do more with a smaller army that was committed to him than what he could with a bigger one that was full of compromise, full of fear, full of doubt, full of wanting the world and not being committed to him, full of compromise. Are we full of compromise today? Do we compromise? Do we have our hearts set on the world and the things of the world, but yet we want God as well? Where are we in the battle? Because if that's where we are, then we have no chance of winning the battle. You see, when David went into battle, he had great faith. He said that he was willing to stand against Goliath. And one of the things he says when the Goliath comes against him, he said that you come against me with sword, with spear, with javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord. You see, David always stood on what God had promised back in Deuteronomy, that when you go up against your enemy, know that it's the Lord that fights. It's the Lord that fights for you. And even after he's defeated, you see that his faith, because he was the one man to stand, in 1 Samuel 17 verse 52, you read that after Goliath was defeated, that then the armies of Israel, they rise up and they pursue the Philistines and they defeat the Philistines. All it takes is one man or one woman to stand, to make your stand. And that will bring about faith in those around you. Those who are weak, those who are compromising, those who are, maybe not in the battle because of fear or because their hearts are dedicated somewhere else. It takes one man and one woman of God just to stand and be committed to the Lord and trust in the Lord and stand in the battle that they're in. And that will make a difference to the people around. It will ignite the faith of others. This morning we are all in a spiritual battle. Don't be full of compromise. Don't be thinking about the world and what it has to offer, and let your hearts be led away, because we are all in a battle this morning. And if you are allowing that to happen, if we are compromising this morning, then we are not fit for battle and we will lose. That's why God told those in commanded the priests and the commanders in the book of Deuteronomy, all those who are distracted, those who are full of compromise, those that are thinking about the things back home, tell them to leave and go back. Because they're just going to lose the war. They're going to lose the battle. And that's us this morning. Let us not be full of compromise. Let us be like David. In all the armies of Israel, one man to stand and be committed to the Lord and trust in the Lord, to be in the battle. And to stand and be courageous and strong and committed to the Lord. That we're able to win the battle that we're in. God bless you all this morning.